The blue-green world of Kepler 442b spun quietly in the darkness of space, its 3 moons casting gentle light on crystal cities that stretched across vast continents. For 3,000 years, the Viridian people had lived in perfect peace on their world, building towers that sang in the wind and gardens that glowed with bioluminescent flowers. They knew nothing of war, nothing of weapons, nothing of the darkness that lurked between the stars. Elder Zephon stood in the highest tower of the capital city, his crystalline body catching the light of their sun as it set behind the mountains. His people had always believed they were alone in the universe, content to create art and music and poetry. They had no armies because they had never needed them. They had no weapons because the concept of violence was foreign to their gentle nature. But now, dark shapes moved across their sky. The Hegemony Empire had found them. Commander Jake Morrison sat at his monitoring station deep beneath the lunar surface, surrounded by banks of computers that listened to the endless chatter of space. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Division had been tracking alien signals for decades, cataloging civilizations and threats from across the galaxy. Most days, Jake heard nothing but the background hum of distant stars and the occasional automated beacon from some long-dead civilization. Today was different. The signal came through at 0347 hours, weak and desperate, transmitted on multiple frequencies with the kind of power that suggested someone was burning out their entire communications array to send it. Jake's translator programs worked frantically to decode the alien language, and when the words appeared on his screen, his coffee cup slipped from his numb fingers. To any who can hear this message, we are the people of Kepler 442b. We are a peaceful race with no knowledge of war or weapons. Strange ships have appeared in our system, and they broadcast demands for our surrender. We do not understand what they want from us, but their messages speak of slavery and death. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help us, we have nowhere to run and no way to fight. Our children hide in the crystal caves while these destroyers prepare to land on our world. We have never harmed anyone. We only want to live in peace. Jake stared at the message for a long moment, then reached for his secure communications link. This was going directly to Earth Defense Command. Admiral Lisa Crawford had been expecting the call. Intelligence reports had been tracking the Hegemony Empire's expansion for months, watching as they consumed world after world with ruthless efficiency. The Hegemony was like a plague that spread across the galaxy, enslaving some species and exterminating others based on their usefulness. They had perfected the art of overwhelming peaceful civilizations before any resistance could form. "Play the message again," Crawford ordered. The desperate plea of the Viridians filled her office, and she could hear the fear in their alien voices. These were people who had never known violence, never had to fight for their lives, and now they faced an enemy that showed no mercy. "How long do we have?" she asked. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Martinez consulted his tactical display. "Intelligence suggests the Hegemony will begin their ground invasion within 72 hours. Their standard pattern is to blockade the planet, demand surrender, then systematically destroy population centers until resistance breaks. With no military to speak of, the Viridians won't last more than a few days." Crawford walked to her window and looked out at the Earth below. Humanity had spent centuries learning how to wage war, how to fight against impossible odds, how to turn their natural aggression into a tool for survival. They had fought each other across every continent and ocean, learning tactics and strategies that had been written in blood and fire. Now, for the first time, they had a chance to use those hard-won skills to protect innocent people. "What are our options?" she asked. Captain Ryan Walsh, commander of the Dreadnought UES Retribution, stepped forward. "The Third Fleet is conducting exercises near the Proxima system. We could have 12 Dreadnoughts and 40 escort ships ready to jump within 6 hours. The Fifth Fleet could join us if we need additional firepower. That's still only 52 ships against a Hegemony invasion force," Martinez pointed out. "Intelligence estimates they're bringing at least 200 vessels." Crawford smiled grimly. "The Hegemony has never faced humans before. They're used to fighting peaceful species who surrender at the first sign of violence. They have no idea what they're about to encounter." She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a direct line to the president." The conversation with Earth's leadership was brief and to the point. There were those who argued against involvement, who pointed out that humanity had no obligation to fight alien wars. But when Crawford played the Viridian distress call, the debate ended quickly. "We don't abandon innocent people to monsters. President Harrison said finally. Do what needs to be done. Within hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled began gathering at the staging point beyond Neptune's orbit. The UES Retribution led a formation of massive dreadnoughts, each one bristling with weapons that had been designed through centuries of human warfare. Escort cruisers and destroyers took their positions, alongside troop transports carrying battle-hardened Marines who had volunteered for humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked frantically in the Retribution's tactical center, analyzing everything they knew about hegemony forces. The enemy used overwhelming numbers and brutal tactics, expecting quick surrenders from civilizations that had never developed military technology. Their ships were heavily armed but poorly maneuvered, designed to intimidate. Rather than engage in actual combat, they've never had to fight a real battle, she reported to Captain Walsh. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered immediately or been too peaceful to offer meaningful resistance. They don't know how to handle an enemy that fights back. Engineer Carlos Mendez supervised the loading of humanity's latest weapons technology, experimental railguns that could punch through any known armor, plasma torpedoes that could crack a planet's crust, point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of incoming projectiles simultaneously. The humans had been preparing for war among the stars, without even knowing who their enemies would be. As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Crawford addressed the crews over the ship-wide communication system. Her voice carried to every human vessel, every Marine, every pilot who would soon travel farther from home than any human in history. Today, we answer a call for help from people we've never met, people who have never done anything but create beauty and live in peace. The hegemony empire thinks they can terrorize innocent civilizations, because no one has ever stood up to them. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten people under human protection. We go not as conquerors, but as guardians. We fight not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that evil should not triumph over good. Make no mistake, the enemy we face is powerful and ruthless, but they have never faced humanity before, and they have no idea what we're capable of when we fight for something greater than ourselves. The staging area beyond Neptune's orbit buzzed with activity as humanity's greatest warships gathered in formation. Captain Ryan Walsh stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as dreadnought after dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace to join their growing fleet. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built with lessons learned from centuries of warfare and designed to face any threat the universe might throw at them. The Retribution itself was a monster of metal and plasma, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern and bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. Her armor was forged from materials that could withstand the heat of a star, and her weapon systems had been tested against every known form of defense. Walsh had commanded her for 3 years, leading her through the brutal Martian colonial wars where human fought human among the red dust and crystalline caves of humanity's first colony world. "Sir, the UES Thunderstrike just arrived," reported Navigation Officer Kate Sullivan. "That makes 12 dreadnoughts in formation with 40 escort ships and 6 troop transports." Walsh nodded as he watched the massive fleet take shape around them. Each ship represented thousands of human lives dedicated to a single purpose: protecting those who could not protect themselves. The crews were volunteers all, men and women who had answered the call when Admiral Crawford sent out the word that humanity was going to war for the first time against an alien enemy. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked at her tactical station, her screens filled with data about their enemy. The hegemony empire had been expanding for over a century, consuming world after world with mechanical efficiency. Their tactics were always the same: arrive in overwhelming numbers, demand surrender, and crush any resistance before it could organize. They had never failed because they had never faced a species that understood warfare as an art form. The hegemony fleet approaching, Kepler 442b, consists of approximately 200 ships, she reported to the assembled officers. Intelligence suggests they're using their standard invasion pattern: heavy cruisers to establish orbital bombardment positions, troop transports protected by destroyer screens, and command ships positioned safely behind the main battle line. Captain Danny Clark of the Intelligence Division stepped forward, his weathered face grim with the knowledge he carried. The hegemony has conquered 47 worlds in the past 50 years. Their method is always the same: They appear in system, broadcast surrender demands, and begin systematic destruction of population centers when their ultimatum is ignored. Most species surrender within hours. Colonel Beth Parker, commander of the Marine contingent, crossed her arms as she studied the tactical displays. Her troops were loaded aboard the transport ships, eager for their first chance to test human combat skills against alien adversaries. These were soldiers who had trained in every form of warfare known to humanity, from urban combat in the ruins of Detroit to jungle warfare in the Amazon basin. They had learned to fight in zero gravity, underwater and in the poisonous atmospheres of distant moons. "What about the Viridians themselves?" she asked. "Any chance they can contribute to their own defense?" Dr. Sam Rodriguez, the fleet's xenobiologist, shook his head sadly. "The Viridians are a completely peaceful species. They have no concept of violence, no military technology, and no understanding of warfare. Their entire civilization is built around artistic creation and philosophical study. They're brilliant in their own way, but they've never needed to learn how to fight." Engineer Carlos Mendez finished his final inspection of the weapon systems and joined the briefing. His teams had been working around the clock to ensure every human ship was operating at peak efficiency. The experimental weapons they carried had been tested in simulation, but this would be their first real combat deployment. "All ships report ready for combat operations," he announced. "The new railgun systems are calibrated and ready. Point defense grids are online. Plasma torpedo magazines are fully loaded." Admiral Crawford's image appeared on the main display, broadcasting from her flagship to the entire fleet. Behind her, the blue marble of Earth hung in space, a reminder of what they were fighting to protect and the principles they carried with them to the stars. "Fleet commanders, we depart in 1 hour," she announced. "Our destination is Kepler 442b, where innocent people are about to die unless we intervene. The journey will take us 6 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. Use that time wisely. Study your enemy, prepare your crews, and remember why we're making this journey." The preparations began immediately. Throughout the fleet, human crews went about their duties with the calm efficiency that came from years of training and experience. Gun crews ran targeting drills until they could hit an asteroid at maximum range, while their ships maneuvered at combat speed. Fighter pilots practiced attack runs in the launch bays, their reflexes honed by thousands of hours in simulation and real combat. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Lisa Chen prepared her medical bays for the casualties that combat would inevitably bring. Human military doctrine accepted that some losses were inevitable in war, but every life was precious and worth fighting to save. Her teams had trained to perform surgery in zero gravity, while their ship maneuvered under enemy fire. In the Marine sections, Colonel Parker's troops checked and rechecked their equipment. Human infantry weapons were designed for maximum efficiency in any environment. Their armor could protect them in the vacuum of space or the crushing depths of an ocean world. Their training had prepared them to fight in conditions that would kill most other species. Captain Walsh walked through his ship, talking to crew members and ensuring everyone understood their mission. These were people who had volunteered to travel farther from home than any human in history, to fight an enemy they had never seen, to protect people they would probably never meet. It was the kind of mission that defined what humanity could become when they put their minds to it. "Sir, all ships report ready for departure," Lieutenant Sullivan announced. Walsh returned to his bridge and took his position in the captain's chair. Around him, his crew prepared for the jump to hyperspace that would begin humanity's first interstellar war. "All ships, this is Admiral Crawford," came the voice over the communication system. "Today we begin a journey that will define humanity's place in the galaxy. We go not as conquerors seeking territory, but as protectors answering a call for help. The Hegemony Empire has never faced an enemy like us. They are about to learn what happens when you threaten innocent people under human protection." The fleet engaged their hyperspace drives simultaneously, and 58 human warships vanished into the swirling energies of folded space, racing across the galaxy toward a world they had never seen to fight for people they had never met. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, waiting for news of humanity's first battle among the stars. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like ghosts in the void, their ships surrounded by the swirling energies that bent space and time to allow faster-than-light travel. 6 days stretched ahead of them, 6 days to prepare for a battle that would decide the fate of an entire species and announce humanity's arrival as a galactic power. Captain Ryan Walsh walked the corridors of the UES Retribution, observing his crew as they went about their duties with quiet determination. In the ship's main briefing room, Dr. Sam Rodriguez worked with a team of linguists and cultural specialists to understand everything they could about the Viridians. The intercepted communications painted a picture of a species unlike anything in human experience. The Viridians communicated through harmonic frequencies that created beautiful music, even in casual conversation. Their cities were grown rather than built, shaped from living crystal that responded to their thoughts and emotions. They have no concept of individual ownership, Rodriguez explained to the assembled officers. Everything belongs to everyone, and their entire society is based on cooperation and artistic expression. They've never developed weapons because they've never needed them. Violence is so foreign to their nature that they don't even have words for concepts like murder or war. Lieutenant Amy Foster studied the tactical data they had gathered about hegemony forces. The enemy empire operated with brutal efficiency, using overwhelming numbers to crush resistance before it could form. Their ships were heavily armed but poorly designed for actual combat, built more to intimidate peaceful species than to engage in prolonged battles against determined opponents. The hegemony has never faced serious resistance, she reported. Every species they've conquered either surrendered immediately or was too peaceful to mount an effective defense. They don't know how to adapt their tactics when an enemy fights back, because no one ever has. Navigation Officer Kate Sullivan plotted their course through regions of space that humanity had never explored, using star charts purchased from neutral traders and intelligence gathered by long-range reconnaissance probes. The journey would take them through 3 different stellar systems before they reached their destination, and each system held unknown dangers. We're traveling through territory controlled by various minor powers, she explained. Most are neutral in galactic politics, but the hegemony has treaties with some of them. We need to avoid detection until we reach Kepler 442b. Captain Danny Clark worked with his intelligence teams to intercept and decode hegemony communications. The enemy's overconfidence worked in humanity's favor, as they broadcast tactical information in codes that human computers could break with relative ease. The intelligence painted a picture of an empire that had grown lazy from too many easy victories. The hegemony admiral in command of the invasion force is someone called Overlord Thane, Clark reported. He's conquered 12 worlds personally and considers this mission routine. His communications to the hegemony capital describe the Viridians as another collection of artistic primitives who will surrender within hours. Of the first orbital bombardment engineer, Carlos Mendez spent his time ensuring that every human weapon system operated at peak efficiency. The fleet carried experimental technology that had never been tested in actual combat. Weapons designed by human engineers who understood that in war, technological superiority could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. The new railgun systems are performing beyond specifications, he reported to Captain Walsh. We can punch holes through any known armor at maximum range. The plasma torpedoes are armed and ready, and the point defense grids can track and destroy incoming projectiles with 98% accuracy. Colonel Beth Parker drilled her Marines relentlessly in the transport bays, preparing them for combat in an alien environment against enemies they had never faced. Human infantry tactics had been refined through centuries of warfare, and these soldiers represented the best of what their species could produce in terms of fighting ability. The hegemony ground forces rely on shock tactics and overwhelming firepower, she explained to her troops. They expect their enemies to break and run at the first sign of resistance. They've never fought soldiers who stand their ground and fight back. Throughout the fleet, human crews prepared for battle with the methodical efficiency that had made their species the dominant power on Earth. Crews practiced their targeting until they could hit moving targets while their own ships maneuvered at combat speed. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation, learning to coordinate attacks and provide mutual support in the 3-dimensional battlefield of space. Dr. Sam Rodriguez continued his study of Viridian culture. Through intercepted transmissions from their world, the communications were heartbreaking in their innocence, as the crystalline beings tried to understand why anyone would want to harm them. They had no frame of reference for the concept of conquest or slavery, having spent their entire history in perfect peace. They're broadcasting poetry to the hegemony ships, he reported with wonder in his voice. The Viridians think that if they can share their art and music with the invaders, they might convince them to leave peacefully. They don't understand that the hegemony sees their peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked with the tactical computers to develop battle plans based on human military doctrine adapted for space combat. The humans would have to overcome a significant numerical disadvantage, but they possessed something the hegemony had never encountered: an enemy willing to fight to the death for principles rather than personal gain. "Our advantage lies in mobility and tactics," she explained. "Hegemony ships are designed to intimidate and overwhelm, not to engage in prolonged combat. They position themselves for orbital bombardment and expect their enemies to surrender. They won't know how to react when we bring the fight directly to them." Captain Walsh spent hours in his ready room, studying everything they knew about their enemy and the people they were racing to save. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, knowing that the decisions he made in the coming battle could determine whether an entire species lived or died. But he also felt a fierce pride in leading humanity's first mission to protect innocent life among the stars. On the fourth day of their journey, long-range sensors detected increased hegemony activity near their destination. The enemy was accelerating their invasion timeline, perhaps hoping to complete their conquest before any unexpected complications could arise. The humans pushed their engines harder, racing against time to reach the Viridian world before it was too late. As they approached their final day of travel, Admiral Crawford addressed the entire fleet one last time. Her words carried to every ship, every crew member who would soon face humanity's first battle among the stars. "Tomorrow we arrive at Kepler 442b to face an enemy that has never known defeat," she announced. "The hegemony expects this to be another easy conquest, another peaceful world to add to their empire. They are about to discover what happens when they threaten innocent people under human protection. We fight not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that evil should not triumph over good. Show them what humanity is capable of when we stand together." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system to find their worst fears confirmed. The beautiful blue-green world hung in space like a jewel, but it was surrounded by the dark bulk of hegemony warships. 200 enemy vessels had formed a blockade around the planet, their weapons trained on the crystal cities below, where millions of Viridians huddled in terror. Ryan Walsh stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched. The tactical display filled with red markers representing enemy ships. The hegemony fleet was massive, but they had positioned themselves for orbital bombardment rather than fleet combat. They expected no resistance and had made no preparations for an actual battle. "Admiral Crawford to all ships," came the voice over the communication system. "Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting for the right of innocent people to live in peace." The human fleet split into 3 groups as they approached the enemy. Captain Tony Martinez led the first squadron in a direct assault toward the center of the hegemony formation. His 12 ships accelerated to maximum speed, their weapons charging as they prepared to announce humanity's arrival in the most dramatic way possible. The hegemony ships detected the approaching humans when they were still millions of kilometers away, but their commanders couldn't believe what their sensors were telling them. Admiral Overlord Thane aboard the command ship, Dominator, stared at his tactical display in confusion. No one had ever approached a hegemony fleet with hostile intent. The very idea was impossible. "Unknown vessels, you will halt immediately and identify yourselves," came the transmission in broken galactic standard. "This system is under hegemony protection. Any interference with our operations will be met with destruction." Admiral Crawford's response was broadcast on all frequencies, so every ship in both fleets could hear it. "This is Admiral Lisa Crawford of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. The people of Kepler 442b are under human protection now." The hegemony admiral's laughter echoed across space. "Humans? We have never heard of such a species. You will surrender your ships or be destroyed. We are the hegemony. We do not negotiate with primitives." "Then you're about to get an education," Crawford replied, and the battle began. Captain Martinez's squadron opened fire at maximum range, their railguns sending streams of hypervelocity projectiles across the void. The hegemony ships had thick armor designed to intimidate peaceful species, but it crumpled like paper under the impact of human weapons. 3 enemy cruisers exploded in brilliant flashes of light before their crews even realized they were under attack. The second human squadron, led by Captain Rachel Stone, approached from the flank using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to hegemony sensors. Her ships were smaller and faster than the main battle line, designed for hit-and-run attacks that would confuse and disrupt enemy formations. Stone's ships struck like ghosts in the night, appearing suddenly among the hegemony destroyer screen and unleashing devastating close-range attacks before vanishing back into the darkness. Enemy ships spun out of control as their engines were destroyed, their crews panicking as they faced tactics they had never encountered. The 3rd Squadron, commanded by Captain Greg Hansen, moved to intercept hegemony ships that were moving toward the planet's surface. These were troop transports loaded with soldiers meant to enslave the Viridian population, and Hansen's mission was to ensure they never reached their destination. His ships engaged the enemy escorts in a running battle that stretched across the inner system. Human fighters launched from their carriers, piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Lieutenant Commander Nick Thompson led his squadron in a daring attack on a hegemony command ship, weaving between defensive fire that filled space with deadly energy beams. The hegemony forces tried to respond to the human attack, but they had never faced an enemy that fought back with such coordination and ferocity. Their ships were designed for intimidation rather than combat, and their crews had grown soft from generations of easy victories against peaceful species. Overlord Thane screamed orders at his subordinates as his carefully planned invasion turned into chaos around him. His ships were being destroyed by an enemy he had never heard of, using tactics that defied everything he understood about warfare. The humans fought like demons, pressing their attacks even when their ships were damaged and their crews were wounded. Captain Walsh coordinated his ship's weapons as they engaged multiple hegemony vessels simultaneously. The Retribution's armor was scarred by enemy fire, but her guns never stopped firing. Human damage control teams worked frantically to keep their ships fighting, even as explosions rocked their hulls. "Direct hit on the enemy flagship," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her tactical station. "Their shields are down and they're venting atmosphere." The battle raged across the system as human tactics proved superior to hegemony brute force. The humans used their ships' superior maneuverability to outflank larger vessels, concentrated their fire to destroy priority targets, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that the enemy couldn't match. Down on the planet's surface, the Viridians watched the battle unfold in the skies above their world. Elder Zephon stood in his crystal tower and witnessed something his people had never imagined: strangers fighting and dying to protect people they had never met. The human ships moved like dancers in the darkness, weaving between enemy fire to strike at their targets with deadly accuracy. As the hours passed, the tide of battle turned decisively in humanity's favor. Hegemony ships began to break formation as their commanders realized they were facing something unprecedented. Some tried to flee the system, only to find their escape routes blocked by human squadrons that seemed to anticipate their every move. Captain Stone's stealth ships appeared behind the hegemony command formation, their weapons targeting the flagship, where Overlord Thane directed his increasingly desperate forces. Her first salvo crippled the massive vessel's engines, leaving it drifting helplessly as human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. The final phase of the battle began when Captain Hansen's squadron broke through the enemy screen and began systematically destroying the troop transports that threatened the Viridian population. Each transport that exploded meant thousands of hegemony soldiers who would never reach the planet's surface, never enslave innocent people who knew nothing of war. Overlord Thane made his final transmission as his flagship began to break apart around him. "This is impossible," he broadcast on all frequencies. "No species fights like this. What are you?" Admiral Crawford's response would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "We are human. We are the people you call when monsters threaten the innocent, and we never abandon those who need our help." The last of the hegemony warships exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its wreckage spinning away into the darkness as the human fleet claimed victory in the skies above. Kepler 442b. Captain Luke Adams watched from the bridge of his cruiser as the enemy survivors fled the system in panic, carrying word of their defeat back to the hegemony capital. The mighty empire that had conquered 47 worlds had just suffered its first major defeat at the hands of a species they had never heard of. Admiral Lisa Crawford stood on the bridge of her flagship and surveyed the battlefield where humanity had announced itself as a galactic power, Scattered debris from destroyed hegemony ships drifted in space, while human vessels moved through the wreckage searching for survivors and salvaging intelligence data. The cost of victory had been measured in blood and metal, but they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. "Damage report," she ordered. Captain Ryan Walsh's voice came over the communication system from the UES Retribution. 7 ships with major damage, but all vessels are operational. We lost 2 fighters and their pilots, but the medical teams report no other fatalities. The hegemony lost over 60% of their fleet before the survivors retreated. Down on the planet's surface, the crystal cities of the Viridians glowed with renewed light as their people emerged from hiding. Elder Zephan stood in his tower and watched the human ships moving in graceful formation above his world, their dark hulls scarred by battle but victorious against impossible odds. For the first time in 3,000 years of peace, his people had witnessed warfare, but it was warfare waged by strangers to protect them. The first human shuttle landed in the central plaza of the Viridian capital, its hull still warm from atmospheric entry. The landing ramp lowered with a soft hiss, and Admiral Crawford stepped onto alien soil for the first time in her life. She was followed by Dr. Sam Rodriguez and a small diplomatic team, all wearing environmental suits that gleamed in the light of Kepler 442b's twin suns. Thousands of Viridians had gathered to witness this historic moment, their crystalline bodies reflecting the sunlight in patterns of incredible beauty. They communicated through harmonic frequencies that created haunting melodies, and as Admiral Crawford approached, their songs filled the air with wonder and gratitude. Elder Zephan moved forward to greet the human leader, his ancient form towering above her but somehow managing to convey gentleness despite his impressive size. When he spoke, his words were translated by the communication devices the humans carried, but the emotion in his voice needed no translation. "We are the people of this world," he said, his harmonic voice creating music even in casual speech. "For 3,000 cycles we have lived in peace, creating beauty and seeking understanding of the universe around us. We thought all intelligent species were like us, devoted to art and philosophy and the celebration of life. We never imagined that some beings could be warriors and protectors at the same time." Admiral Crawford removed her helmet, breathing the sweet air of an alien world for the first time. The atmosphere was rich with the scents of exotic flowers and the ozone from the crystal formations that grew throughout the city. "We are human," she replied. "We come from a world called Earth, and we believe that innocent people should never have to face evil alone." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, his instrument scanning the gathered Viridians as he began the work of establishing formal diplomatic contact. The crystalline beings were fascinated by the humans, having never encountered a species that combined such advanced technology with a willingness to risk everything for strangers. "Your people traveled across the galaxy to help us," Elder Zephan continued, his songs of gratitude echoing off the crystal walls. "You fought and bled for beings you had never met, asking nothing in return. This is something beyond our understanding, yet we are grateful beyond all measure." Captain Danny Clark worked with his intelligence teams to process the data they had recovered from the destroyed hegemony ships. The information painted a picture of an empire in decline, grown soft from too many easy victories and unprepared for the kind of resistance humanity had shown. More importantly, the data revealed the locations of other worlds under hegemony control, innocent species enslaved or waiting for liberation. "Admiral, you need to see this," he reported over the communication link. "The hegemony has been sending reports back to their capital about their expansion. There are dozens of species under their control, and many more that have been requesting help but had nowhere to turn. Word of our victory here is going to spread fast." In orbit above the planet, the human fleet established defensive positions and began the process of setting up a permanent base. Engineer Carlos Mendez supervised the construction of orbital platforms that would serve as both defensive installations and diplomatic centers. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, and they intended to stay. The Viridians offered to share their advanced healing technologies in exchange for human protection, beginning the first formal alliance between Earth and an alien civilization. Dr. Rodriguez worked with Viridian scientists to understand their biocrystalline technology, while the aliens marveled at human engineering and tactical knowledge. Captain Walsh walked through the Retribution's corridors, visiting the wounded and ensuring his crew understood the significance of what they had accomplished. These men and women had participated in humanity's first interstellar battle, proving that their species could stand against any threat the galaxy might offer. Within days, the communication arrays throughout the system began receiving messages from across the galaxy. Species that had suffered under hegemony oppression sent their own distress calls to Earth, requesting alliance or assistance. The Kepler 442 system became a beacon of hope for innocent civilizations throughout known space. Admiral Crawford stood in the Viridian Council chambers, surrounded by the crystal formations that served as their seats of government. The alien leaders had gathered to formally establish the treaty that would bind their species to humanity in mutual defense and cooperation. Today marks the beginning of something new in galactic history, she addressed the assembly. For too long, peaceful species have lived in fear of those who would exploit their gentle nature. No longer, Earth stands ready to protect any civilization that values life and freedom over conquest and domination. The treaty was signed using both human writing and Viridian harmonic patterns, creating a document that sang with the promise of cooperation between species. Within hours, similar requests for alliance arrived from civilizations across the galaxy, all seeking protection from the darkness that lurked between the stars. Captain Luke Adams established the first human embassy on Kepler 442b, a building that combined human architecture with Viridian crystal growing techniques. It would serve as the headquarters for what would become the Galactic Defense Alliance, humanity's gift to a universe that had waited too long for someone willing to stand up to bullies and tyrants. The human fleet took up permanent positions throughout the system, their ships serving as both guardians and symbols of hope. Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy, carrying a simple message that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Earth had arrived, and innocent people were no longer alone in the darkness.